quick break. I just want to say thank you for all the people around the world, Jamaica, Germany, Asia, Europe, South America. Thank you for listening to Leap of Health. Thank you for the support. And remember, my book is out. You can find it on Barnes & Nobles and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Thank you again for all the support. And now, back to our episode. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Alex Valgood, and this is Leap of Health. And today we're going to be talking to Michelle Haynes. This is going to be part of our 10-part series, Healing Through Cultivating Art. She's a hairstylist, podcaster, creator, short writer too, and everything else. And I love everything about her. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Alex. I'm excited to be here. I am excited to have this conversation. Yeah, super stoked.
Thank you. Yay. And before we start, with the more deeper questions, tell us a little bit about your story and how you became to be you now at this point in life.
I could babble on forever, like one big long run-on sentence. But gosh, how'd I get here? Podcaster, hairstylist. So kind of a creative kid, I was a dreamer, still am, and loved drawing and art and nature and colors and daydreaming and all the things growing up. And at some point in my life, I think around the age of 12, I started cutting my siblings' hair and my mom's hair. I don't even know how or why. I'm the youngest of 9. We have a big family. So we always had a bin with clippers and scissors in it in the laundry room, and my mom would cut our hair. She's
Nice.
Yeah. And so I don't know, maybe one day I was like, maybe I can do that better. I don't know, or just seeing things in shapes.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked that up, and I remember my mom, when it was time graduating high school, she said, why don't you go to beauty school, become a hairstylist? And I was like, I'm not doing that. That's what stupid people do. That's when you're too dumb to go to college. So I went to college and I studied biology and sports medicine. I think I had a little bit of time where I flipped into theater, and then I flipped back into the sciences, and then I dropped out of college after like 5.5 years because I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I just felt like it wasn't that. Love learning about everything medical and science. It's super cool, but just felt like that container wasn't, like I was going to be trapped or stuck inside something that didn't fit. So moved to Colorado from Michigan. And when I was out here, I got a job at a hair salon as a receptionist and thought, oh, maybe I could become a hairstylist. And so I did. And I like the idea that it was something that I could do and be myself and look the way I wanted to look and work a type of schedule I wanted to work. I felt like I didn't have a lot of constraints on me. And so that has served me well. I've been doing that over, I think, like 25 years now, somewhere around that. And the podcasting came in, interestingly, kind of a branch off of that. So I remember our friend Laura Powers mentioning something about podcasting, and I thought, oh, if I did a podcast, what would it be about? And I started thinking about all these really interesting conversations I have in the salon with clients, and how could I capture that? And eventually realized you can't really authentically capture that same thing if they know they're going to be on a podcast. So that kind of dwindled, or not dwindled, but kind of gave way to my current podcast, which is 1111 Calling, which is basically about sharing stories with guests that felt they were being called to something, paid attention to it, stepped in the direction of it, and how that's changed their life for the better. And I believe there's purpose when that happens for everybody, whatever it is, whether it's that it leads to somewhere that's important in your life. And that when we share these stories, it gives other people the inspiration or courage to pay attention to those callings and to step in the direction to what is calling them. So that's kind of what I've been up to.
No, that's amazing. I mean, sometimes we don't really think about what we dream as a kid or what we like as a kid, especially when it comes to like the arts and creating and doing little things. But then, fast forward a lot of years and what you started, you know, doing as a kid, trying to cut people's hairs as you were little, it became something that you actually get paid for it. And it's just so
Mm.
cool, right? And uh, how do you think art has pushed you to be who you are now?
How do I think art pushed me to be who I am now? Well, I think all art is a practice, um, more than it is about what you create. It is the act of creating. I think that holds
Mm,
the money, the juice, the goods. And the reason I say that is I think the act of being creative, the process of being creative is a channel from divine, universe, God, whatever you want to call it, cosmos. And so just the act of being creative not only clears a channel, but allows maybe for growth, expansion, clarity. It's just one more tool, right?
mhm,
Like some people could do meditation or prayer, but I believe that the act of being creative and the process of being creative allows for that. And so through that, I think that can push you forward in life, right? As you open, as you grow, as that process allows you to expand, that's part of life. And when we deny ourselves that, it's harmful. It or it's not allowing for that. And so it's like you're stagnant. Does that
mhm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And that, brings me to a question. How do you think art has healed you? Or do you think in some things,
Mm.
art has changed you to the path of healing?
Well, just to take podcasting, let's just take that as an example. That's a creative process, right? And I always knew, I don't know if you remember me saying this, you might, because we took a podcasting class together. So, um, like I was going to do a podcast, and to me, it wasn't about as much like, I'm going to do this podcast and I'm going to be like the next big podcaster. I'm going to, you know, it was the process of doing, I knew just like in my gut, like this inner knowing that through the process of doing podcasting, I was going to grow. Not just from like, oh, I learned how to use GarageBand to edit, but the people I was going to meet, the interviews I was going to have, how that would cause me to reflect and think, whatever. I knew through this process, I'm going to grow. And it's true. I have.
Hmm.
And the healing that came from that um, literally was connecting with people like Brad Yates
Hmm.
and learning more about tapping. Being able to interview one of my favorite meditation guys, which is David G. Um, I've been dabbling in meditation for years. I'm getting more and more into it and more clarity about how I want to utilize that for my growth and expansion and highest good. But so literally connecting with people like that and having conversations with people who offered different types of what I would consider healing modalities, naturopathic doctor, things like that. So that is one way. But again, I think it's an aid in the process of your own growth and healing and expansion. So the self-reflection
Mhm.
that just has come through the last year and a half of podcasting. And it's all intertwined, and it's all meant to offer something to me in my path in life, if
Mhm.
I choose to see it and recognize it and dive into it.
Yeah, for sure. I think when we do any type of art, as you said, it really, I was talking to one of our friends too, Lisa Mansour,
Mm.
and she says something that it will just stick with me forever. And it says that she said that every time we do any type of art or creation, it changes ourselves in a very
Mm.
special way.
Interesting. I think that makes sense.
Hmm.
I've never thought of it that way, but how could it not? You
Hmm.
know, it has to have an impact because it's energy
Hmm.
within that, and it's going to have a cause and effect. So that's a really cool way to think about it. Of course, Lisa thought of that. I
It was,
love her art.
yeah,
I was
it
just
was,
looking at some of her stuff yesterday.
I love that she's a great artist. I think it was just so like so magical the way she said it. And
Yeah.
I feel like we don't think about it in that way when, we're drawing or painting or doing a little sculpture or cooking, because I think cooking is also such a big way of art and like
Mhm.
dancing, singing. But I think the more we do it, the more I feel like we experience that some sort of a special change within ourselves. So I think it's just amazing, and I think it was just like spot on the way she said it. I was like, oh my god, this is
Yeah,
great.
I'm gonna hit you up and for that exact quote because I think I'm gonna write it down. I can't remember exactly what it was, but
I tell her, I'm
yeah.
like, I'm gonna put it on shirts, and she's like, yes, go ahead. It was great. It was great. But what do you think? Do you do any other type of art that makes you or feel different in a way?
Well, I love to cook. So, you were talking about that as a form of art. I do believe that because you're creating
Mm-hmm.
and you're using imagination. At least I mean, unless you're just like cooking because you have to and you follow, yeah, follow a recipe. But I there's so much in cooking, right? It is a form of art, but it's so therapeutic. So there's
Mm-hmm.
that overlap again. Also, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole here. Um, Cooking and feeding others, the ritual of cooking, the ritual of feeding each other and the nourishment. It's not just physical nourishment from the food, but I believe that the love that you put in and that joy and that attention that you put in and the presence that you are when you cook, there's a piece of you in that, and that is healing to others in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. As a matter of fact, just yesterday I reached out to a friend, but more of an acquaintance. I've known him for years, but it's not like we're BFFs or anything. And
Mm-hmm.
a year ago, a good friend of his, as well as his wife, and they were both coworkers. So his friend and his wife were murdered at their place of work by a kooky white supremacist dude that just targeted people in Denver last year about this time. And he's been really pushing forward this past year with a lot of grace and strength, but also it's a struggle. I mean, how do you
Mm-hmm.
even begin to move forward? And I mean, just all the things. So I reached out to him the other day and I just said, hey man, one way that I know to show love and support to others is through cooking for them. And I would love to do this for you if you would have it. And he was like, so grateful. And what was interesting about that, and I kind of explained to him my thoughts about, that love and healing
Mm-hmm.
through cooking for someone and feeding somebody. It's not just healing for him. It's
Mm-hmm.
healing for me. I believe that always, that exchange between the one giving and the one receiving, it's mutually beneficial. Like some people need help and support, but the ones giving the love, the help, the support, it is nurturing to them as well. And it is necessary and needed to have that kind of exchange. So I was grateful that he was receptive. So yes, cooking is one other thing I do that's creative. I have been doing some journaling immediately after meditation. I believe that is creative. Like a couple summers ago, I don't know if you remember this podcast episode. I was in Lake Michigan, which is one of my favorite bodies of water. I find it healing. There's just so many things about water, but that body of water in particular. And I just like got this hit, like you have to write a poem. And I don't write at all, anything.
Right.
Like I'm not a writer in my head, which I should not say that. Was surprised by that request from the universe. So I did it and it was totally vulnerable and, whatever, but I did it. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to do more of this, which again made me chuckle because I was like, who are you thinking that? But even now, just journaling after meditation, and I just let it kind of be a free, like, blah, 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 whatever comes out. But when I go back and read some of it, it's really cool and it's meaningful and it's inspiring. And that I think is a creative process. And again, it's to clear the channel and allow certain things to come through that will eventually piece together and have meaning, even if it doesn't seem meaningful in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I like to dabble in painting from time to time. I recently did a pottery class, which I friggin' loved, and I will definitely be doing more of that. There's something about that earthen clay in your hands, the connection to it. There's so many parallels between that process of making pottery on the wheel and like spiritual philosophical approach to life, like being present,
Mm-hmm.
accepting what is. Don't try to be too controlling or it's going to go to hell in a handbasket real quick. So just not being attached. I made some of the best pieces, not by actually being consciously aware and looking and seeing what I'm doing, but just by feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that really overlaps with how I would like to approach life as well.
That's really
So,
great.
so there's some few other random bits of creativity that I can just think of off the top of my head.
And that's amazing. I mean, I like the when you mentioned, you know, it goes both ways, the creator and the receiver. And I like to point that out because I feel like, one of my intentions for to creating this 10-part series is for people just to think of things that otherwise they wouldn't. You don't have to be an artist, you don't have to like a super painter, a professional painter, professional dancer, or sculpturist, or whatever it is. But even just looking, go out there and see those statues of the park, or at a museum, or anywhere. Really, you find art anywhere, and by just sometimes you know looking at it, that's when that kind of like sort of effect happen, right? It's
Sure.
not just what the artist is trying to conceive, but now the receiver on what they're looking, and their thoughts and what they're really seeing, right? Because we both can be looking at the same painting
Mm.
and having such a different experience. I could be looking at the strokes and how they're created, and you could be looking at the color or a certain thing from the paintings. I think it's just such a cool experience to just either or. You could be the creators, as you mentioned, and I think it could give you that experience, and also be the spectator and the one that receives the art from someone else. And I think it's just beautiful both ways. I really never thought about it until you mentioned it right now. I was like, yes, this is
Well, and
great.
I think, yeah, and even as you're elaborating on that, and I'm picturing somebody at a museum, right? The art is in the eye of the beholder. And people who don't think of themselves as creatives, or I'm not creative, or, I'm not an
Yes.
artist. It's not about that. Like, you can be the one reading the book. You could be the one, and you're still receiving that,
Hmm.
when I talk about that channel with the divine or whatever, you can do that through being the observer. And that's really cool because, even as I was explaining it, I'm thinking it from the perspective of the one creating, but then you just kind of flip that, and it made me think about it from the perspective as the viewer or the receiver. And yeah, that's really cool. And
Hmm.
that the energy is still there. And it made me think about something else. When it gets to be to the point that the one creating, or the artist or whatever, loses sight of the creative process and feels the pressure to be like the famous artist, or I have to go do this show, or it's lost that essence.
Hmm.
um I wonder if then the ones receiving or viewing lose the spirit of that as well, or if it can still serve a purpose for them.
I think it could. I think I did a lot of paintings on my day. I did art shows, exhibits with my paintings. That's something that a lot of people probably don't know, but I did, and I loved it. I never really thought of me as like the next Picasso, but I did what I loved, and I thought they were great, right? In what I did, and it's almost like some of them I did them when I was like in a very maybe down or low energy, or I was going through a situation, and there was that's kind of like the energy was that maybe like some sort of dark feeling or whatever in some of my paintings. And in some of them I was like super happy, excited about life, whatever was going through life. And you could see, you could do perceive, I think, as the spectator, because I know some of them, and I laugh at this because my younger brother, I have one of my paintings that I really like because I think I just let go of so many baggage that I was going through at that time with that painting. And when he sees it, he goes like, that looks like a nightmare.
Well, and I
you
think
know
that's true. Like, I'm not so much talking about that. Like, I do think there's the authenticity of the energy is what's important. And whether that energy is dark or confused or whatever, that's fine. I'm thinking more, I guess, of I'm going to create this um solely because I think it's what the audience wants, or what will make me famous, or
Mm,
what the gallery wants, or maybe what Hollywood wants in a film, and
yeah,
it- it's not like a genuine piece of themselves. Does that
right.
make better sense? Like, it's just like, I'm just gonna frickin' make something to fill, or to get money, or to satisfy something outside myself, I think is
Mm,
more. Does that
what
make
you're
better
saying.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I think in that, I think on that example, I guess we could perhaps also feel and be like, well, that was not a great film, or it was kind of like
Yeah.
boring. I think we still perceive whatever situation is happening. If someone is just doing especially in Hollywood, you mentioned that, right? They have
Yeah.
to follow certain protocols, or like the storyline has to be this way or that way. And perhaps the actors might not agree to what they're playing or whatever. They still do it because it's their
Right.
job, right? And
Right.
then those are the movies that were like, that's not great.
Yeah.
is
It's
it always leaves
interesting.
less with that feeling of like, no, we didn't feel that well on that one. It was boring or something. So I think it still translates.
Hmm.
Um, and it's always not. the greatest feeling, as if someone that is so passionate about their film
Right.
or their art, and you're like, wow, oh my God, you got me in tears. It just make me remember, this stage of my life, and it was so great. Like, you just can't contain the connection, right? So I think, and that's just my train of thought, because I know
Yeah.
I've done things that, uh in art, especially like dancing, when I have to dance with certain company, and they're like, well, you need to do this piece, and I'm like, I don't want to. But you still
Yeah.
go and do it, because that's just part of it. I think it does sometimes translate as, like, whoever is watching me doing the performance, like, oh, you didn't look well, or you look upset, or like some sort of a thing like that, right? So I think you know, I feel that still translates in some sort of way, even though some people might do it for the money, or like, oh, I'm gonna just do this because that's what they're asking me for. I think it's still that, as you mentioned earlier, it's still that stage of creating.
Yeah. True.
So, so that
You
could
know,
that could be, but that was a really good point to make. I haven't thought
I
about that.
just had another thought when you're asking about utilizing creativity for healing. One of the things on my list for 2023, just kind of something that I feel like I want to do because it scares the shit out of me, is learn to sing. But not to like go sing on stage, half because I think it'd feel really good to be able to belt out like freaking Janis Joplin song or something,
Yes,
like,
yes.
but
She's my
like
favorite too.
I can't even sing in my car without cringing. And so to me, I've known for a while now there's some kind of emotional block associated with singing, probably something in the throat chakra, but there's something to that. Like the thought of singing in front of myself, but in front of other people would be terrifying. It's vulnerable. And not just because, like, oh, they're gonna like make fun of the way I sing or something, but there's some kind of emotional
Mhm.
or something energetic component to that that's, I don't know, but I know there's something to it. So then I'm like, okay, so I need to do this, right? Like this is needed. Um, but then I'm like, well, who's going to do it? Because I could go to any like music school or get singing lessons, but it's not about that. It has to be the right person who knows like this isn't just about learning to sing, like there's something else underneath this, and who is the one that can be trusted to carry that healing or to
Mhm.
help with that healing. So I haven't begun that process yet, but I know, when you get something and you're
Yeah.
like, oh shit, now that I've seen, like, it's been shown to me, I can't ignore it. I gotta do it.
Can
Like,
unsee that.
yeah.
No,
And
for
so
sure. No, but I think you should definitely do it as something that we've been talking about, like with all the gifts. I think almost a scare feeling, when you're like, no, that's scary, or even though you're not telling anyone, because also that makes you vulnerable when you say like, oh no, I'm scared to sing. Obviously, you don't go around telling people that. But I think, if or I do that a lot with myself. If it feels a little bit scary, it's almost like what you said, like, now I have to go and do it. I know there's something
yeah.
happening with my body. I feel like, it's gonna do something great for me. And I think just like, getting over the fear. And you mentioned like you wanna look for someone that will
Mm,
help you go through the process. As an instructor, I tell my students, I might not be the instructor for you, but the only way you're gonna figure things out is by trying. So you come, get a class with me. If we connect and you feel like I
mm,
can help you in whatever way you want me to help you, then you continue. But if not, then you move on and look for someone else. But trying, I think, is the best way for figuring things out, especially when it comes to like artistic things where you perhaps need an instructor to learn how to do the tango, or even though, as you said, you don't have to go and do a show, this is just for you,
Mm-hmm.
because as we mentioned earlier, it might change you in a very special way that we will not know until you
Exactly.
try, right?
Exactly.
Who knows? Because you could be the next Janis Joplin. And you've
You
been
never
here and
know.
there. You never know.
You're
You
like,
know?
son of a gun. I interviewed her right before she started her singing career.
Exactly right. But that's one of those amazing things about art. You know, if you don't try, you're like too busy. Like we were talking also, I was talking about it with someone else. Like we get so, I mean, how long do you take scrolling sometimes? 30 minutes? An hour? How
How
about
long how long
you
do I take time doing what?
scrolling? Sometimes we
Oh,
take,
scrolling. Oh,
yeah, like on the
bad.
phone on social media and things like
So
that,
bad.
Yeah, and we all do it because we're just kind of like part of our lives now.
Yeah.
Like
I catch
there's no,
myself all the time. I'm like, what am I doing? This is dumb.
yeah, exactly. And so, instead of doing that, what about doing a little thing?
Yeah.
Perhaps as you're washing dishes, put some music, like let the groove on in your body, something, because I feel like every little single time you put yourself into experiencing the artistic vibe and wave and situation, I think I feel that it really brings something inside from us that we haven't seen yet, that it's yet to bloom in front of our eyes.
100%. And I keep like, as we're talking, this keeps coming into my head, like art has medicine to offer. It does, like a medicine. There's art, the artist, like when we were talking about like whoever I find for a singing teacher,
Right.
there is, it's often the message, the messenger, and the timing. So
Mm,
the medicine woman, and when you're ready for it, or whatever, like that same idea that this art perhaps has some medicine to offer you in some
mm-hmm.
way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm like going through all the different forms of art that we just talked about. Music is huge. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just listening to music,
Yeah. Who doesn't like music? I mean, I haven't found a soul in my life that says like, shut that down. I don't
I
listen to
had a nun
really
in high school who thought
liar. The person was
she
lying.
was crazy. She told me my art was bad because she didn't like the vibe it gave her, the subject matter. And I was like, you don't know. But yeah, I remember she just thought certain types of art or certain types of music were not good because I don't know, maybe she thought the medicine they offered was bad, or I'm sure in her head, like it was from the devil or something because it was Catholic school.
Oh,
But
well, just a whole other
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So I mean, I don't think she was against all music, but I remember her trying to say there's only good certain types of art or music that were like right. And I was like,
Interesting.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. We're like, no, no, no,
I
no.
know. Yeah. But yeah. And the funny part was, I think her name was Sister Joy. I
Wow.
beg to differ.
That's
That doesn't sound
amazing.
very joyful to me.
Well, I think that's like the beauty of art, right? There's so many types for everyone.
Mhm.
Like there's so many different things that you could try. It could be like gothic, like we're kind of
For
like talking
sure.
about dark and not dark. It could be gothic. It could be like modern pop art or whatever. And we're all different too. I wouldn't expect everyone to like the same thing and do the same thing, otherwise it will be such a boring world out there. So I
Yeah.
think going back to the amazingness of being creators, even if you're like, no, I'm not a creator, I'm an account. I love to probably accountants, whoever listens to me that are actually accountants are like, what the heck? I'm not like that. But it's just, the thought of being so serious about your job and, like, oh, I'm not a creator, I'm not this or that. That's just not it. We're all creators.
Mm.
Whether you're an accountant, engineer, doctor, or whatever is so serious your job is, you still trying to create something within your job or work, whatever you do. And I think it's so important to acknowledge, because the more we do that, I feel like the more we can create and change things at work or out there.
Two things that immediately are popping into my head. Number one, let's just use the example of an accountant. Well, however they're approaching the work is creative, right?
Yes.
Not every accountant's going to approach everything exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then the second part, and I can't remember who it was I heard or read or whatever years ago, but I remember, so you always think like public school systems, what's the first thing they get rid of? Creative arts. And I think it was a podcast I was listening to a while back, but whoever it was saying you would have no business or economic growth or whatever on the flip side, like the left brain, right brain people. The left brain people would have nothing to do if the right brain people didn't think of the ideas. So you need those creative people because they're just important to a productive society from like a capitalistic standpoint or whatever. I think is how they were talking about it, like industry or new business or whatever. You need those creative people to come up with all the ideas and work in collaboration with those left brain people that are then going to make it happen, right? Or turn it into something or whatever. So even those like people that seem so sterile and black and white and whatever are necessary to do the dance of continuing that creation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's almost kind of like what we were talking about earlier, the creator and the receiver. It has to be someone to receive the whatever we're trying to create to actually make it happen or make it evolve or make it more practical or whatever it is. And I think one of the things that I keep bringing out and that I want people to really think about is that all of our life since we were born, there's something artistic about it. We're born and we're in a blanket, whether it was blue or pink or whatever, right? Somebody thought of that. The way the hospital is made, the whoever built the medical equipment had some sort of artistic way to do it, and also not so artistic, more practical, and make sure everything works. So it's there there is the creative process through all of our lives. We go to school, we want the cool whatever, animal print or whatever cartoon you love, and it's something that someone else thought about it and created, and we go through college and we're like, look at my fashionable shirt and these colorful tennis shoes. So it's something that we don't think about it, but since we're born, it's given to us, or it's in our surroundings, at home, whether you're super poppy or more of the indie type or whichever is your liking, someone else thought about it for you to be like, here is your blue pillow, or this is your amazing microphone and it will look great in yellow, whatever that is, right? So I think art moves with us through life, even though you could call yourself creator or not. It almost helps you to develop your character or yourself. What do you think?
Never thought about it. It makes me like I'm looking up at my hanging plants and the plant holders. I'm like, oh yeah, somebody made that, and somebody made that, but maybe they got part of the idea from what somebody else made, and then
Yeah.
that person got something. And like one of my pots that a plant is in has the flower of life on it, right? And like, ooh, that just made me think about nature, right? Like, look at nature,
That's
how
perfect art right
beautiful
there.
and artistic and just like the patterns, right?
Yeah.
In stuff and in fiddle ferns and whatever, like mushrooms. I was looking at some crazy picture as I was scrolling on Instagram last night, and it was like this type of mushroom that looked all cosmic, like it was all iridescent blue and pink, and it was crazy looking. It was like super cool, and I'm like, "Dang, man, if we think we got anything figured out, we don't, because there's these crazy freaking mushrooms that look like outer space, And I'm like, whoa, that's kind of cool. So yeah, I think pretty much, yeah, I mean, everywhere you look, right? And how you're influenced and what you try on for size. Like, it makes me think of college and music. And I remember having not an argument, but a conversation with somebody in college. I was big into like raves at the time.
Hmm.
And he was more like punk rock. And then we had another friend that was like a deadhead. And I was like, you guys, it's all the same. Like, you dress a certain way, you dress a certain way, I dress a certain way. You talk in the punk rock talk, you talk like a deadhead person and raver. Like, we all got our things, but when you just take back the label, it's all the same thing. Like, you're all part of this like little community or sub community to fulfill whatever purpose or to give you a sense of identity, but it's kind of all the same when you get down to it.
Yeah.
So just, yeah, the influences and the art and the creativity and the way we find how we fit in that or how we
Hmm.
feel inspired by it,
Yeah.
um, we can utilize it to nurture ourselves, all of it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think people can use art for healing in some way?
Always. Yeah. Yeah. Um, in a lot of ways. So like, why do we call them the healing arts?
Yeah. Oh.
Right.
Mm.
Um, I think, again, just thinking of music, not only as it goes in your ear and how it makes you feel, you're going to feel different if you're listening to Metallica than if you're listening to Brian Eno ambiance music, so to utilize that for healing. Think about, like, they talk about patients with Alzheimer's, and you can like how music impacts them, right? And can bring them back into kind of like more like
The present
lucid
or
state. Yeah.
hmm
So there's got to be
yeah,
something to
right.
that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I mean we're no scientists here, but I think we have experienced life. And I do feel like definitely like dancing, like
Mm-hmm.
painting, listen to music, all
Oh
sort of
yeah.
artistic things make you feel
Yeah.
good.
I know people that play music, like that's how they soothe or work through issues. It's almost like meditative to them to be playing the guitar. I can think of someone in particular right now, and that's their solace, is through that playing of music.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, are there studies out there? Been done probably, but I think,
I believe they are.
yeah, I mean, I think someone speaking for themselves is
Yeah, I
really legit enough.
think so.
So
And
yeah,
powerful too. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
What are to finishing up, what will you say to all those people that are like, I have time for it, I'm busy, I have 4 kids, you have no idea what you're talking about, I don't even go on social media because I have to work 2 shifts, and I can't do all this art that you're saying.
The naysayers. I mean, there's always bullshit within that, right? there's 24 hours in the day and they're not running all 24, and yeah, okay, set aside 6 to 8. Hopefully you can sleep, but my guess is they're not sleeping very well. So, it's a choice. How are you going to manage your time? How do you want to feel? Do you want to feel like you can just sit there and bitch and say, oh, I don't have time for that. I can't do that. Look at all, I got XYZ. Yeah, all those things. Like, you might have a really tough set of circumstances. You might have to work 2 jobs to feed yourself or your kids. And that's not going to change unless you change something. So where's the self-nurturing? They don't tell you on an airplane to put the oxygen to yourself before you go to help somebody else for no reason. The reason is you cannot show up in all those ways you need to if you're not taking care of yourself. So how are you taking care of yourself? Creativity, or the creative process, which I think what we're getting at is it shows up in a lot of different ways in the world, is a way to self-nurture. So it's a choice. Do you want to feel better? Do you want to feel like you can have some bit of a control over certain aspects of your life? So if you do, then you can, and it's a choice. Uh, I didn't like that answer when I was in a earlier time in my life, you know.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. And even if it's 1 minute, 1 minute, you can do 1 minute. You can turn on the radio for 1 minute. You can go, here's a simple thing that's creative. Put on some music and light a candle and watch the flame move to the vibration of the music for 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can say that they don't have 1 minute in their life to do something. That's a start. I mean, that's just one simple example, right? So yeah, I call BS on that.
That's a drop the mic.
I know. I was like, "Ugh."
And I love that. That was great. No, I think it's nothing else to say. It's just like a choice. We get so many opportunities throughout our day, even though when it's busy and it's serious, because you might be a nurse, in the
Mhm.
ER or whatever. That I think we don't take for granted what you're doing or what you're fighting for, or trying to get your kids, a good meal and pay their bills. And we know the economy, it's not great these days, and we're all struggling in our own way. But I feel, what you just said, it was so spot on. Self-care, you know for a couple of minutes, just make that choice of like, I'm gonna sit and listen to my favorite song, or I'm gonna sing, or I'm gonna draw with my kids before they go to bed.
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell them a story. Storytelling, it's an art too. It gets
Mm.
you creative and connect to others, and whatever it is, right? Anything that we can create and share, and just make the choice. I just said, I think it was just so powerful to really think of that. Like, I'm so tired, I just want to go to bed. Maybe before you go to bed,
Mhm.
dance a little bit, or sing a little bit, or look at something beautiful, or just go outside and look at the moon. Deep breaths.
Mhm. I'll tell you
Something.
what. Here's an easy one too. Uh, Not a huge chocolate person, but a lot of people are. But take a little square of chocolate, put it in your mouth, make it last as long as possible. So don't chew it, just let it melt, and be present with that. Who made that chocolate? Where'd that chocolate come from? The beautiful cacao plant, right?
The
What's it feel
flavors.
like on my tongue?
Yeah.
How slowly is it melting? Like, enjoy it and be creative with the dance of that chocolate in your mouth and what
Yeah.
that process is like. I mean, how eating a piece of chocolate can be creative if
Yeah.
you let it be. And so even that,
Anything, right? No,
yeah.
thank you for all that. I think we have talked about in general of many things, and I hope everybody that's listening gets something out of it. If they want to listen to your amazing podcast or they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, my podcast is called 1111 Calling with Michelle Haynes. You can find that on pretty much any podcasting platform, such as Apple, Spotify, Pandora, Google,
Everywhere.
all the things. My website right now is michellehaynes.net, and that's MICHELLEHAYNES.net. Just know that's going right now, but I am going to recreate a new website, but you can find all my podcasts there. And I am on Instagram, 1111 Calling, and Facebook as well. So I
Awesome.
think that covers it.
I will put all your information on the show notes too. And
Thank you.
also, yes, for sure. Thank you for being here today too.
Mhm.
And if you guys need to know any more about my podcast or everything that I'm creating and doing, you can find it on alexbalga.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. Remember, my book is out. You can find it on Barnes and Nobles and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. And also, if you have a question about it or you want to talk about it, send me a message on social media and I will get back to you. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Thank you, Michelle, for being here. And everybody, have a blessed day today.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.